Hi everyone, I hope you don't mind that we're sitting outside today. It was actually quite warm even though it's winter and the sky is really clear, so I thought I might come outside. Today's video, I made this dress inspired by Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy album, and I thought it would be really fun to do something like this. Let me know if you think I should make this a series where I just keep on making clothing items inspired by albums that I really love, depending on how this one goes, obviously.
Alrighty, starting the day by drawing out my design. I am providing more step-by-step instructions on how to create this pattern tailored to your body in a blog post linked in the description, and this video can serve more as a visual aid, I suppose.
I am doing some hardcore mathematication for you guys. I really hope this is something you can follow along. I know it's going to be a little bit of maths and fidgeting around before you can actually start sewing. I'm trying to be as comprehensive as possible with the measurements and everything.
I'm eating curry, by the way, and creating some algebra instructions for you guys. Using a scientific calculator is completely unnecessary, but it definitely helped me feel a bit more intellectual. I think the best part of this algebra pattern is that you can tailor it exactly to your own body. Year 7 maths was useful after all, right?
This album is really one of my favorite albums as a 20-something-year-old. I don't know if that makes me super basic. This album is really personal to Tyler's story, and I think that makes the album a little bit more special, and I think it helps me reflect on my own relationship with loneliness.
Tyler talks about being really lonely, and I think it's relevant now more than ever with some parts of the world still in quarantine. Being alone affects some people way more than others, and it's a reminder for me to keep tabs on how people around me are doing.
Initially, I wasn't going to make a paper pattern for this because I just really wanted to start sewing ASAP. I think it's worthwhile keeping a paper pattern for this. I mean, I am creating this from scratch, so if I ever want to recreate this dress with a different pattern or alter it a little bit for some different style, I think it'll come in really handy.
Anyway, the crux of this design is a lot of long and skinny trapezium shapes attached together to go in nicely at the waist and flare out like flower petals. The back part of the dress consists of 4 long skinny trapeziums, and I think the trick is to start with straight lines and then let them curve in slightly wherever your waist sits.
I really wish I could give you guys a paper pattern for this dress. Not a paper pattern, sorry, a PDF pattern, but I don't know how to create them. For now, I hope you can deal with all of my mathematics.
So this is sort of what you're trying to achieve: 3 panels at the front, a chestal rectangular piece, and 4 strips for the back. I will get to the sleeves later on in the video, but I am creating straps and attaching a regular sleeve to that.
Sometimes people are maybe even ashamed of feeling lonely, but I think it's such a normal emotion. It just means you're human. To me, this album feels like summer itself. I think I first discovered it a couple of years ago in around like the November time, and whenever I listen to it I feel so nostalgic and it brings me back to the summer months.
The chest piece should be able to fully cover the front half of your chest widthwise. The front middle piece must be cut on the fold of the fabric, and this is the largest of all the trapezium shapes. Then I'm cutting out 2 skinny long trapeziums to go on either side of the middle front piece. The length of these back pieces should be from where you want the dress to sit, just at the armpit line across your back, to however long you want the dress. Cut out 2 of each by making a fold of your fabric right sides together, so you have 2 mirror image pieces. Then just measure out some straps according to your shoulder curve length. Unfortunately, my camera didn't record me cutting out the actual sleeve, but I just used this standard t-shirt sleeve piece as a guide, and I cut out a sleeve that was 2 times the length of this and also 1.5 times the height of that pattern.
I think my favorite song of the album has to be Where This Flower Blooms, because it's definitely a huge plus that Frank Ocean features on it. He's also one of my favorite artists. I really like how in that song we are able to see where Tyler has come from and how far he's really come to be where he's at right now, and I think that's just really incredible. When I listen to Where This Flower Blooms, it really reminds me of going for a really warm drive, like the sun rays are coming through the car windows and I just feel like a blanket of warmth. I mean, it sort of looks very busy with the flower print right now. Oh my god, it's so noisy outside. There's not much to it. I can start sewing everything up.
I decided to sew the front part of the skirt first because I needed to use the width of that middle panel to create darts for the front bodice. I really made sure that the length across the middle would match up perfectly so that the seam from the darts and the skirt pieces line up perfectly. Sewing in the darts here.
I think a good segue into talking about loneliness might be the song See You Again, which is something that more people might have heard of from the album. The song is about a dream person in Tyler's mind, someone that he yearns for, but they only exist in his mind. And I think that's sort of like relevant to today's dating world. Just hearing stories from my friends and stuff, their experiences on dating apps. It just sounds really hard, and obviously I also have my fair share of experiences from dating apps, and I think I've got a few anecdotes that I could share eventually. I'll share one today.
Okay, seriously though, absolutely no hate on dating apps whatsoever. I think they can be a great way to bring people together, but I feel dating in general can sometimes feel like you're chasing after this person that doesn't even exist, like in Tyler's song. I personally started feeling so detached when I just swiped and swiped, and it just felt like all the photos were merging into one. Cut out the boob part symmetrically, but folding your fabric in half. I wish I made my cups a little bit smaller, but it worked out alright in the end. Then I cut out a small triangle at the corners for the comfort of my armpits. Then I cut out the pieces for the bigger boob pieces that will actually hold your boobs. So from here on I will call them boob holders. I made mine 1.5 times the size of the original piece I cut out because I don't have big boobs anyway, but obviously if you have a larger chest then double it, triple it, whatever fits you. Just remember that it should be able to wrap around one of your bra cups for reference. I think tailoring clothes to your own body is so awesome because sizing in the fashion industry is a tad whack and can make you feel really bad sometimes. Making my own clothes has definitely helped me feel better about my own body for the way it is, and I hope it can for others too. Then I'm folding about 2 centimeters or so down and sewing across that bottom edge and another line above it to create a channel for your elastic. Mine was about half a centimeter or so, but it depends on what elastic you use. Then feed your elastic through the channel with a safety pin, and the length of the elastic should match the length of the original smaller cup that you cut out. Then sew down the edges of the elastic to secure in place.
I always get ENFP on my Myers-Briggs personality test. What do you guys get, and do you think it's a whole hoax? Like, is it just fake news, the whole test? I'm very borderline extrovert, which I think means that I don't necessarily have to thrive off connecting with others and being with other people all the time. I actually really appreciate being alone sometimes, but I think there really is a fine line between appreciating being alone and actually feeling crushing loneliness and legitimate social isolation. So that's a distinction to be made.
I put a gathering stitch around the bottom of the curve so you can pull and gather. Gather the boob holder until it matches the size of the original smaller cup. I then sewed down that middle part down once. To attach the boob holder to the bodice, let's start with the right boob for example. We want the final bodice to look like this. So you need to match up the corners whilst the fabric is right sides together, like this, and sew along that curve until you get to the other corner. Okay, so we've finally finished the bodice. I attach it to the skirt, matching up those vertical seams like I mentioned before. Then I am sewing the back panels together. Attach side to middle and also the other side to middle, but we want to keep the middle seam open for the zipper later.
Remember when we sewed the front panels together? Well, I just realized that I completely forgot to put in the slit down the front, which was initially part of my design. So I'm gonna have to seam rip down one side of the panel and then overlock those edges and put in the slit again.
Then I am overlocking those edges. I overlocked each of the edges of the side that I just opened up, and for reference my skirt slit shows my left leg. Then match up the right sides together, but watch carefully here. Only sew a part of the way down. How high you want your slit to go up is up to you, but mine goes all the way to my knees. Then cut perpendicular to that stitch line and fold back the remaining opened edges so that you can sew them down to create a clean edged slit.
I went out with this one guy and it was just like, to date, it is one of the randomest dates I've ever been on. I picked a restaurant and the guy said, oh, I've actually been there. So I was like, okay, cool. Then I don't have to like figure out where it is and everything. I can just follow you and it'll all be good.
Sorry, I had to voice over this part of the story because the way I explained it initially made absolutely no sense. But basically we met up and we went to the general vicinity of the restaurant, and he just stood there and was like, oh, I've definitely been there before, and looks around a little bit but doesn't move. So after a bit of silence, I felt really awkward and quickly pulled out my phone map, and we eventually found the restaurant. I don't know, it was just so awkward to start with.
He took me to his workplace, which was right around the corner, but the randomest thing is that he started teaching me how to code, or like showing me how he codes and all these new codes that he came up with. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, I love it when somebody nerds out about something they are passionate about, but it was just like really random because I don't really have a background in coding, nor do I have a keen interest in learning how to code, but that was pretty interesting.
Then I sewed down each of the sides of the dress so that the only open part is the middle back seam where the zipper should go. And this is where we are now. I think it is turning out pretty good, if I do say so myself. I just need to do the sleeve situation and then put in the invisible zip. Also give the bottom hem a crop. Every panel is like a different length. So maybe that's like got to do with my cutting skills, or I'm just terrible at maths. Who knows? Or I can't use a ruler. So I overlocked the straps and sewed down one edge of the seam because the inner side of the strap will be visible from the right side. I could have made the straps a bit thicker, but whatever, I'll just stand by it. Then just see where your straps want to go, and I sewed them into my dress on both the front and back. Then I got my sleeve pieces and sewed down the armpit seam and put a gathering stitch around the top curve and gathered it to create the puff. I then attached it to the sleeve along the strap and against the armpit curve of the dress. The sleeves, I still need to shirr the bottom of it to bunch it up, but I'm pretty happy with how the neckline's looking. And I also have to still add the zipper that's still open. It's really bothering me how this is uneven, so I think I'm gonna add ties to the ends of these flaps and then tie it. Then I hemmed the sleeve by sewing once down and then once more because I couldn't really go and bother to get the iron out. Then I started shirring 0.5 centimeters from the bottom edge of the sleeve, and I added 3 rows of shirring that were all 0.5 centimeters apart.
His office also had a table tennis thing, like a ping pong table. Just as on a side note, I feel like offices that have a ping pong table are screaming. We have a great work-life balance because we play ping pong in our work breaks. Maybe they are really like hardcore and passionate about ping pong. I'm not a huge player myself, which is why I was really quite shocked at how long he wanted me to play ping pong with him for. I was absolutely terrible and I kept like missing the ball when he threw it at me, but he kept going. He was like so into it. I am the most uncoordinated person ever, but obviously I didn't want to be rude and say, oh, I want to stop playing now, because he was enjoying himself so much. I reckon to someone else it might have been a really fun date, but I just recall that date being a bit awkward. Yeah, when we said goodbye, he was like, oh, maybe we should watch a movie sometime. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe. But then we never messaged each other ever again, which I think means he found me equally as boring.
Okay, seriously though, I was once asked in a job interview if I was good at table tennis because apparently there was this huge competition in the office for it. And my dad's office also has a table tennis setup and he really loves it. It's almost like there's this universal love for ping pong that's excluding me, but anyway, final bits and bops. Putting in the invisible zip, then I'm sewing down the top edge down once to clean off the edge. And also sewing down the remaining open bottom of the skirt after the zipper ends. If your bottoms don't match up, like this is the bottom edge, and look at this, I've cut it so off, but that's okay because I think once you sew everything together, you can just like give the bottom a trim and even it all out. So even if it's not perfect from the get-go, you can always fix it, so don't worry. What happened was that all the panels matched up in length except for one panel, which I think is because I accidentally just cut it wrong, since the pattern measurements itself seemed to be fine. Finally, I overlocked all of the bottom edges and sewed the hem twice up up like I did for the sleeves. I just made little ties to even out my slightly uneven frills along the boob cups and hand sewed it into the dress.
I do want to talk a little bit about the design of my dress without sounding like that meme. You know, the one where it's like author, the curtain was blue, and then what the author meant, the curtain was blue. The English teacher, author, is conveying his melancholy state. He is in such a deep depression, and this is reinforced through the use of his blue curtain. You know, that kind of thing. I used to actually write essays in that way in high school because that's just what I was taught. Little did I know, nobody actually writes like that in university anymore. Well, at least not in what I'm studying, but maybe if you're an English major, you still write in that way. Let me know.
Without sounding like that meme.
Alrighty, let's get down to some fun English analysis on this dress. The square neckline leaves the chest vulnerable and is reminiscent of the way Tyler exposes his own loneliness and the struggle of finding genuine friends. The album is masked with a feel-good and upbeat melody, but underneath he explores how corrosive loneliness is to the human soul. Likewise, this dress features puff sleeves, which can help you feel a bit more confident on days that you might not be feeling right on the money. The midi length of this dress reinforces the idea that less is more, as Tyler says in one interview that he wanted to keep the Flower Boy album to no more than 45 minutes. He refined his lyrics over and over until he was left with something very short but extremely sweet. Okay, well that aside, I also think the fabric selection was pretty fantastic. We have a bit of literal interpretation with the white and yellow floral theme, and we've used green, which Tyler says is his favorite color in the song Where This Flower Blooms. I had so much fun with this, and I hope you enjoyed too. Bye!